Welcome, dearly beloved chosen ones. Some moves are so subtle that the world doesn't notice, but heaven can't sit still. Think about that for a moment. We're talking about the kind of decision so quiet it doesn't make a sound in the room, but it sends a wave through eternity. Wings shift, hearts stir, and the heavenly realm takes notice. And here's the part that will shake you. It wasn't over a trophy, a contract, or a headline. It was over you. In the unseen realm, not everything you do is registered as significant. Some actions barely cause a ripple. But there are rare moments when a single choice, made in silence, shakes the atmosphere so violently that heaven erupts. That's what you just did, on earth. It may have looked small, almost invisible. People around you might have thought, that's it? That's all? But the spiritual realm saw the truth. You didn't just take a step, you redirected the path of your life. You didn't win because you made the loudest move. You won because you made the right move. The kind of decision that rewrites your destiny without announcing itself. And yes, if you're wondering, the angels really did stand up for you, which is almost humorous to imagine. Celestial beings with perfect posture, suddenly on their feet like, did you see that? They just altered the course of their future. So buckle in. Because by the time you understand why heaven applauded, you'll realize your last choice wasn't just a win. It was a spiritual spectacle. You made a move that the untrained eye couldn't see. Your last decision didn't make headlines in human spaces, but it sent shockwaves through the unseen realm because no one recognized it as the turning point it truly was. On the surface, it looked like nothing, a shift so ordinary it could be mistaken for routine. But in reality, that decision was calculated, deliberate, and spiritually strategic. It wasn't born from impulse or desperation. It came from a depth of understanding that most people can't access. You saw an opening others overlooked and acted without broadcasting it. That's why heaven responded so fiercely. When something is invisible to the untrained eye, it can slip past earthly opposition. The enemy can't attack what they don't see coming. And your move was hidden in plain sight. People may have been too distracted by noise, ego, or surface-level drama to notice the shift that just happened. And that's exactly what you intended. You didn't need their approval, their understanding, or their applause. You only needed to make it, and you did it flawlessly. This wasn't the kind of action that trends or earns instant validation. In fact, some might have dismissed it as nothing. But heaven saw the chains that broke when you did it. They saw the ripple effect that began to unfold in your favor. They saw the trap you avoided because you moved with wisdom, not emotion. Silent moves require a maturity most people never reach. It's easy to make dramatic gestures in public to prove a point, but it's another thing entirely to make such a precise, measured move that your opposition only realizes you've won long after the victory is sealed. That's the space you moved in. This is why the angels didn't just nod in approval. They stood. They saw someone refusing to play by predictable rules, someone who moved in divine alignment so perfectly that the victory was secured before anyone else even realized the game had shifted. You didn't just make a move. You made the move, and heaven made sure it didn't go unnoticed. You broke a chain without anyone hearing it snap. What you did wasn't just about solving a temporary problem in your own life. It was about cutting through something that had been strangling your future for years, maybe even generations. Most people go for quick fixes. They cover up the cracks, avoid the real issue, and settle for temporary peace. But you went deeper. You didn't settle for treating symptoms. You confronted the disease at its root. Generational chains are clever. They disguise themselves as just the way things are. Patterns of thinking, cycles of loss, self-sabotage habits, unspoken family rules that no one questions. Breaking those chains is risky because you're challenging something that's been comfortable in your bloodline for decades. Most avoid it because it's messy, costly, and lonely. But you decided that enough was enough. When you made that silent decision, you didn't just walk away from a toxic cycle. You slammed the door so hard it can't reopen. That's why the angels erupted. They weren't just clapping for your personal breakthrough. They were celebrating the fact that everyone who comes after you will walk on a cleaner, freer path. The move you made didn't just change your story, it rewrote the family script. This kind of breakthrough always comes with a heavy price. You had to stand your ground while being misunderstood, maybe even criticized by the very people you were trying to protect. You had to endure pressure from every side to just let it go. But you refused, because you knew that tolerating it would allow it to root itself even deeper into the next generation. It takes a rare kind of courage to fight a battle you may never get credit for. Your children, nieces, nephews, and even generations yet unborn will have more peace because of what you did, even if they never know your name. That's why the applause came from heaven, not earth. The chain you broke didn't just loosen. It shattered in a way that ensures it can't be rebuilt in the same form again. You didn't just win for yourself, you won for an entire bloodline. You moved without alerting the world. In an age where people broadcast their every step, you chose a different path. You didn't hint, you didn't drop clues, and you didn't give anyone the chance to prepare a counterattack. You acted in silence, and by the time anyone realized what you'd done, it was already complete. That level of discipline is rare. Moving without announcing isn't about secrecy for its own sake. It's about protecting what is sacred until it's strong enough to stand on its own. Premature exposure can kill a plan faster than any enemy. Every time you share too soon, you invite doubt, sabotage, and distraction. You understood this, which is why your move was so clean. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. You didn't need to hype yourself up or prove you were doing something great. You trusted your decision to speak for itself when the time came. That made it impossible for opposition to prepare against you. By the time they saw the result, it was too late for them to undo anything. The game was over before they even knew it had started. This kind of restraint means holding your excitement in check when you want to share it. It means biting your tongue when people doubt you, knowing you could prove them wrong instantly, but choosing not to. It means carrying the weight of your decision alone until the right moment. It's not easy, but that's why it worked. The angels saw the wisdom in your timing. They saw that you didn't just move, you moved with precision. They saw how you avoided traps simply by refusing to reveal where your next step would land. That's why heaven applauded. Not just because you acted, but because you acted in a way that gave the enemy no chance to respond. You refused to trade your integrity for convenience. You had the chance to take the easy win, the kind that would have silenced critics and looked good in the moment. All you had to do was compromise a little, bend your values just enough to fit the situation, and you could have walked away with quick validation. But you didn't. You chose the harder road. You chose to protect your integrity, even when it cost you. That's rare, and that's why it shook heaven. Temporary wins are seductive. They promise relief, applause, and validation right now. They whisper, "No one will know. It's not that big of a deal." But you understood something deeper. The moment you let go of your integrity, you've traded something priceless for something disposable. You knew that once you cross that line, it becomes easier to cross again, until eventually you can't even see where the line was. You refuse to be bought with flattery, bribes, or shortcuts. You refuse to let anyone own your decisions just because they offered you something in return. You refuse to sell your soul for the comfort of winning today. You were willing to take the short-term loss to protect the long-term victory that can't be taken away. The angels saw the temptation you faced, and they saw you walk away with your head high. They saw that you weren't thinking about what was easiest. You were thinking about what was eternal. That kind of choice often makes you look foolish in the short term. People may think you missed your chance, but time will reveal that the win you turned down would have decayed in your hands. Instead, you kept what mattered most, your soul, your peace, and your unshakable character. That's the kind of decision that makes heaven stand up, because you didn't just win for a moment. You won forever. You chose the battle that would kill the root, not just trim the branches. Most people fight what they can see. They go after the flare-ups, the obvious pain, the surface-level problems that are easy to name and blame. That's why their victories don't last. They're just temporary relief disguised as solutions. You didn't fall for that trap. You refused to waste your energy on symptoms when you knew the real enemy was hidden deeper. You had the patience and courage to go for the root, even though it meant the fight would be harder, longer, and more uncomfortable. The battle you chose wasn't glamorous. It didn't come with quick satisfaction or instant applause. In fact, it often looked like you were losing because you weren't fighting the easy target everyone else was swinging at. But you knew better. You understood that if the root remained, the problem would keep growing back, stronger, smarter, and harder to defeat each time. That's why you were willing to take the hits, endure the criticism, and push through the pain. You weren't just trying to feel better for now. You were fighting for a freedom that would last. Going for the root requires clarity. You have to see through distractions, manipulation, and even your own desire for immediate comfort. It means knowing when not to waste energy and having the discipline to hold your ground while everyone else is chasing quick fixes. That's why heaven noticed. The angels saw the weight you carried and the wisdom in your aim. They saw that you weren't just surviving. You were setting yourself free, fully and completely, and that's a victory worth celebrating forever. You walked away without carrying the poison. Walking away is one thing, walking away clean is something entirely different. Most people leave a harmful situation dragging invisible baggage with them, resentment, bitterness, anger, or the constant need to prove they were right. They might physically remove themselves, but emotionally they're still chained to what hurt them. That's how the poison of the past keeps bleeding into the present. Oh, you didn't let that happen. You didn't just leave, you left without taking the contamination with you. It would have been easy to replay the offenses in your mind, to keep feeding yourself on the unfairness of it all, to sharpen your words for the moment you'd get to set the record straight. But you didn't. You chose peace over payback. You chose healing over holding on to grudges. You understood that carrying that kind of poison doesn't punish the ones who hurt you, it slowly destroys you. Leaving clean meant releasing more than just people. It meant releasing the narrative you kept repeating in your head. The fantasy of them finally apologizing, the need for closure on your terms. You accepted that you might never get those moments, and you walked away anyway. That's a kind of strength you can't fake. When you leave without bitterness, you also leave without being tied to their energy anymore. You're no longer reacting to them, no longer making choices shaped by their actions. You didn't just step into a new chapter. You stepped into it without bringing along the infection of the old one. The angels stood for that, because walking away clean is a declaration of victory on a higher level. Anyone can fight back. Anyone can harbor anger, but it takes a rare soul to break free and keep their heart unpolluted in the process. That's when you become untouchable. You could have carried the poison and still moved on. But that would have meant you didn't really escape. By refusing to carry it, you denied your past the power to follow you. You risked being misunderstood forever. You made a decision knowing full well that some people would never see it for what it truly was. You knew that no matter how clearly you explained, no matter how pure your reasons, some would twist it, some would judge it, and some would flat out lie about it. And still, you went ahead. That is a rare kind of courage, the kind that values truth over image, the mission over your reputation. Most people make decisions not only based on what's right, but on how they will be perceived. They want to be right and be seen as right. You didn't have that luxury. You understood that in certain moments, you cannot serve truth and image at the same time. One will always bow to the other. You chose truth, even if it meant your name would carry scars in certain circles forever. You accepted that some people would invent their own version of events and pass it down like fact, that whispers and rumors might outlive the reality of what happened. You let them talk because you knew your assignment wasn't to correct every mouth. It was to do what was right in the eyes of God and your own conscience. Choosing truth over image costs more than most realize. It costs relationships, opportunities, and sometimes even safety. It can exile you from places you once belonged. It can make you a stranger among people who used to praise you. But you refused to let fear of that loss control your steps. You weren't willing to trade your authenticity for acceptance. The angels saw that sacrifice. They saw the quiet loneliness of walking a path where applause never comes, but divine approval never leaves. They saw you stand still while false stories spread, trusting that in the eternal record your truth would remain intact. Some victories are visible right away, others are only revealed in the fullness of time. You chose the latter, and heaven rose to its feet for that kind of integrity. You made a move without human applause built into it. You acted knowing there would be no praise, no recognition, and no immediate validation. It wasn't trending. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't something that would earn you likes, shares, or public honor. In fact, you knew before you even acted that the choice would probably be ignored or even questioned by those who didn't understand. But you weren't looking for human applause. You were looking for alignment with what was right. Most people are fueled by recognition. They want to be celebrated for their actions. There's nothing wrong with that, unless it becomes the reason they move. You didn't operate from that place. You acted because it was what heaven required from you in that moment. Without an audience to impress, your motives were exposed, and you proved that you're willing to do the hard thing without anyone clapping for you. That is spiritual maturity in its purest form. Obedience without the comfort of recognition. Heaven doesn't weigh the size of your audience, it weighs the purity of your intention. The angels saw that you didn't wait for public approval before acting. They saw that you were willing to risk being invisible if it meant staying in divine alignment. When you take steps like this, you free yourself from the chains of people-pleasing. You stop being swayed by trends, opinions, and shallow validation. Your compass shifts to something higher and steadier. That's why this move, though quiet to human eyes, was thunderous in heaven. No, there was no standing ovation from people, but there was one from the highest realm, and that applause lasts far longer than any recognition the world could have given you. You became the answer to a prayer you didn't even pray. Your last move went far beyond personal victory. It became the solution to prayers you never heard and problems you never knew existed. Sometimes the impact of what you do stretches into spaces you will never see. You didn't just free yourself, you unknowingly became the breakthrough others had been waiting for. There are battles raging beneath the surface of life that most can't see. People pray for relief, for change, for an open door. Your silent, deliberate, and precise decision answered those prayers without you even realizing it. You shifted energies, broke strongholds, and opened paths that had been blocked for years. What you did sent ripples through communities, families, and even realms you had no idea were connected to your struggle. This kind of unseen impact is rare because it requires acting without needing recognition or reward. You simply moved in alignment with what was right, trusting the process, even when the outcome was unclear. The angels saw the full scope of your move, the knots untied in places you'll never visit, the healing released into people you'll never meet, the freedom delivered to souls you didn't know were bound. Your action was a key that unlocked chains for others, and heaven celebrated that with joy. It's a reminder that your life is part of a bigger tapestry, one where your choices affect more than just you. Even in isolation, you are woven into a divine network where your obedience can spark freedom for others. You are not just surviving, you are helping unseen communities heal through your faithfulness. You took the hit others wouldn't have survived. You stood where others would have fallen. When the blow came, many around you would have shattered, broken beyond repair, or driven to give up. But you took it. You absorbed the weight of that pain and pressure in silence, carrying it because you knew deep down you were built to withstand it. This wasn't about showing off strength or playing the hero. It was about quietly holding the line for what had to be done. Others might have crumbled under the same strike, retreating or breaking their spirit, but you remained. You didn't just survive the hit, you survived it without losing yourself. You bore burdens that would have destroyed less resilient souls. By doing so, you kept the path open for those who couldn't face that kind of trial. That kind of silent sacrifice is invisible to most people. It doesn't come with cheers or recognition. In fact, it often looks like stubbornness or even weakness to the outside world. But in the spiritual realm, nothing is overlooked. Every moment you held steady, every ounce of pain you carried without complaint was recorded in heaven. You didn't dodge the hit. You met it head on, knowing that if you fell, the consequences would ripple far beyond you. Your strength wasn't just physical or emotional, it was spiritual. The angels know it. They witnessed you absorb what others couldn't, and that's why they stood and applauded. You didn't just survive the blow. You turned it into your armor, your testimony, and your victory. You turned down the offer that was designed to own you. It looked golden. It sounded perfect. On the surface, it glittered with all the signs of success, ease, advancement, opportunity, the kind of thing most people would leap toward without hesitation. But you saw beyond the shine. You recognized it for what it truly was, a trap disguised as a blessing, a leash wrapped in velvet. Many would have taken it, blinded by the immediate gain and the applause that might follow. But you refused. You understood that some deals come with a price no amount of money, influence, or comfort can justify. The cost was your freedom, your integrity, and ultimately your soul. You chose to walk away from what seemed like a win because you knew it would come with chains. Saying no to that kind of offer isn't easy. It means turning your back on something others covet. It means trusting there's a better way, even if it's unseen and uncertain. It means valuing your truth over external validation. You made a choice that declared, "My worth is not for sale. My path cannot be bought." That kind of decision shakes the spiritual realm. The angels saw you reject the chains disguised as gifts. They applauded your refusal to be owned, your refusal to trade eternal freedom for temporary gain. Walking away from what looks like an opportunity can feel like losing, but in truth, it's the beginning of real victory. You didn't just say no. You reclaimed yourself from a system designed to control you. Your move wasn't just brave, it was revolutionary. And that's why heaven stood and gave a standing ovation. You resisted the urge to prove your power. You had every reason to show your strength. The temptation to set the record straight, to expose every weakness in those who doubted or wronged you, was real. You could have unleashed words that would leave no doubt, could have crushed opposition in one decisive moment. But you didn't. You held back. Not because you lacked strength, but because you understood something deeper. Real power doesn't need to be performed. Most people think power is about noise, dominance, and spectacle. You know better. You understand that true authority is steady, grounded, and independent of recognition. Resisting that urge takes extraordinary restraint. It means choosing patience over impulse, wisdom over ego, and long-term impact over short-term satisfaction. You realize that proving your power in the moment might win the battle, but it could lose the war, so you chose strategy over display. The angels applauded because they saw the difference between a warrior who seeks revenge and a leader who commands respect through control. They saw your confidence in the quiet, where no one else dared to wait. Holding back your power wasn't weakness, it was mastery. And mastery turns a momentary victory into a permanent one. You moved in alignment, not an impulse. You didn't act just because you felt like it. You didn't move because the pressure was high or because others told you it was time. You waited for the deep inner confirmation, the quiet yes that comes from alignment with something greater than yourself. Impulse is loud. It grabs attention quickly, but often leaves chaos behind. Alignment is quiet. It doesn't announce itself, but its effects are lasting. Your choice to wait, to listen, and to step only when the timing was right shows a spiritual maturity that few achieve. You understood that acting too soon or too late can derail a plan meant to unfold with precision. So you tuned out the noise. You refused to be rushed. You trusted the timing that came from within. And because of that, your move was more than just effective. It was unstoppable. The angels saw that you didn't just act. You acted in sync with divine timing. And that is why your decision had the power to shift not just your path, but the entire atmosphere around you. You played for the eternal scoreboard. Your move wasn't about the quick win, the applause, or the short-lived satisfaction everyone else was chasing. You were playing an entirely different game. You were playing for the scoreboard that exists beyond time, where victories aren't measured in hours or days, but in generations and eternity. Most people scramble for wins that fade. You made a choice that will stand long after you're gone. You valued legacy over spotlight, purpose over popularity, depth over drama. You weren't just trying to win this round. You were rewriting the rules so that the win would last forever. That perspective is rare because it requires sacrifice in the present for rewards you may never personally see. But you understood that real victory is permanent. That's why heaven erupted. The angels didn't just see you win. They saw you secure a future that no one else can touch. You've just walked through decisions so profound, so rooted in wisdom, that they shook realms beyond what human eyes can see. Each silent choice you made wasn't just an action. It was a master stroke that shaped destiny. You broke chains that had lasted generations. You refused shortcuts that would have cost your soul. You chose battles that would heal, not just soothe. You carried burdens others couldn't bear, and you did it without poisoning your heart. You risked being misunderstood, knowing truth often stands alone. You made choices that earn no applause here, but a standing ovation in heaven. Your strength wasn't proven by noise, but by restraint. Your timing wasn't rushed by pressure, but guided by alignment. And you focused on what would last, not for a season, but for eternity. This is the blueprint of those who refuse to let the world dictate their moves. Your decisions declare that you are walking in a higher calling. You're carrying a weight and wisdom that commands respect, even in silence. The world may never fully see what you've done, but heaven has recorded it, and your soul will carry its power forever. Stand tall. Your path is marked by divine strategy, unshakable courage, and eternal victory. The standing ovation has already begun. If this message spoke to you, if you know you're in the season of making silent, destiny-shaping decisions, don't let the connection end here. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a word meant for your journey. Tap the like button. It helps this message reach others who need it right now. Drop a comment below and share what silent decision you've made or are making. Your story might be the confirmation someone else is praying for. Share this video with someone you know is walking a quiet but powerful path. Together we are building a community of people who understand that real moves don't always make noise, but they always make history. Your next breakthrough could be one silent decision away. God bless you.